Very few slave ships have ever been found, but in Alabama and in sites all around the planet, archaeologists are making discoveries, finding physical evidence.
Everyone believed the river had buried its darkest secret forever, until divers reached a sunken slave ship and uncovered evidence that challenged decades of assumptions. What they found has sparked fierce debate among historians, scientists, and descendants, raising difficult questions about memory, identity, and justice. Some believe the discovery could rewrite part of history, while others urge caution until every clue is verified. But what exactly was waiting beneath the water all this time that could change everything we thought we knew about this tragedy? Beneath history's silent grave. The descent began with modest expectations. Divers slipped beneath the dark waters of Alabama's Mobile River, believing they would document little more than another aging wooden wreck, resting beneath thick layers of mud. Visibility was so poor that even powerful lights struggled to cut through the murky water, forcing every movement to be slow and deliberate. Nothing about the conditions suggested they were about to witness something capable of reshaping one of America's most painful historical stories. Yet as they entered the cargo hold of the long-lost slave ship, the atmosphere changed almost immediately. Instead of finding wood reduced to fragments by time, they encountered sections of the vessel that appeared astonishingly intact. Every new beam illuminated by their lights deepened the mystery rather than answering it, and the researchers watching the live footage quickly realized they were seeing something few believed could still exist after more than a century and a half beneath the river. The discovery carried enormous historical weight because this was no ordinary shipwreck. It was the remains of the Clotilda, widely recognized as the last known slave ship to bring enslaved Africans illegally into the United States in 1860. Its captain, William Foster, had intentionally burned and scuttled the vessel after completing the voyage, hoping to erase every trace of the crime. For generations, many believed the river had succeeded where the fire began, swallowing the evidence forever. Even after the wreck was confirmed in 2019, many assumed little could remain inside beyond scattered debris and damaged timbers. That assumption now appeared increasingly uncertain. As the divers continued their careful examination, they found the lower cargo hold preserved in ways that defied ordinary expectations. Thick river sediment had surrounded much of the structure, shielding it from the oxygen that normally speeds decay. Instead of collapsing into dust, portions of the wooden framework still held their shape, allowing researchers to see the confined space where 110 captive Africans had endured the brutal Atlantic crossing. The dimensions alone left a powerful impression. It became painfully clear that this was not simply an archaeological site, but a preserved witness to unimaginable human suffering. The reactions among specialists were immediate but measured. Rather than rushing toward dramatic conclusions, archaeologists recognized the importance of documenting every detail before making broader claims. Even so, experienced researchers acknowledged that the level of preservation was extraordinary. Some quietly questioned whether the river itself had unintentionally protected evidence that the captain had desperately tried to destroy. Others wondered what additional discoveries might still be hidden beneath the sediment, waiting for modern science to uncover them. That growing uncertainty transformed the expedition from a routine investigation into something far more significant. The divers had entered, expecting to study the remains of history. Instead, they encountered a place where history seemed to be waiting, remarkably preserved, with secrets that had survived the very attempt to erase them completely. The wreck was meant to vanish forever, yet it survived as a witness. Who tried to erase this forbidden journey? And what secrets did the river protect beneath the surface? Could the remains reveal the truth they fought to bury, or something even more shocking? Keep watching. Fire couldn't silence forgotten truth. What the divers uncovered beneath the Mobile River soon became far more than an archaeological discovery. As experts examined the surviving timbers, they realized they had found the remains of a crime deliberately concealed over 160 years ago. Every preserved plank led back to Captain William Foster's attempt to destroy all evidence of one of America's most infamous illegal slave voyages by sinking the ship forever. The voyage itself had already broken federal law. By 1860, importing enslaved Africans into the United States had been illegal for decades. Yet wealthy businessman Timothy Meagher reportedly financed the expedition anyway. Foster successfully transported 110 captive Africans from West Africa to Alabama despite the legal ban. Once the people had been removed from the vessel, the captain faced a dangerous reality. If authorities found the ship, they could connect it directly to the illegal operation. Destroying the evidence became his final mission. His solution was swift and deliberate. Foster ordered the ship set on fire, allowing flames to consume its sails, rigging, and everything above the deck that could identify it. When the blaze had done enough damage, he opened the vessel to the river, letting water flood the hull until it slipped beneath the surface. From his perspective, the combination of fire, water, and passing time would finish the job. Few could have imagined that the very river chosen to hide the evidence would become its greatest protector instead. As researchers examined the wreck generations later, that irony became impossible to ignore. The flames had destroyed much of the upper structure exactly as intended, but the lower sections settled deep into river sediment where oxygen struggled to reach them. Those conditions dramatically slowed decay, preserving parts of the cargo hold far better than anyone expected. Instead of eliminating the evidence, the sinking had sealed it beneath layers of mud that quietly guarded it for more than a century and a half. That unexpected preservation changed how specialists viewed the wreck. It was no longer simply an old wooden ship resting beneath dark water. It had become a rare historical record, protected by natural conditions that Foster never anticipated. Some observers saw remarkable coincidence, while others viewed it as history refusing to stay buried despite every effort to suppress it. Either way, the discovery challenged the belief that the crime had been successfully erased. The divers had entered the river searching for the remains of a vessel. What emerged instead was something far more powerful, tangible proof that even the most determined attempts to destroy history can fail. Beneath the mud, the river had quietly guarded evidence that continued raising difficult questions, suggesting the greatest discoveries inside the wreck were still waiting to be revealed. Buried beneath the silent riverbed, this wreck has defied every expectation. But what hidden secrets did the preserved timbers protect for over a century? Could this discovery rewrite history? And what will researchers uncover when they finally explore the ship's darkest remaining mysteries hidden below? Let's find out. Secrets locked beneath riverbed forever. The deeper researchers examined the wreck, the more one question remained. How had so much of the ship survived after lying beneath the Mobile River for more than 160 years? Unlike most 19th-century wooden vessels that decay into scattered fragments, this wreck remained remarkably intact. Large sections stayed recognizable, challenging expectations and forcing archaeologists to rethink what could survive beneath the river's muddy floor. The answer did not lie in chance alone. It lay beneath the wreck itself. After Captain William Foster deliberately burned and sank the vessel following the illegal voyage in 1860, the lower hull settled deep into thick layers of river sediment. That mud created an oxygen-poor or anaerobic environment that dramatically slowed the natural process of decay. Without enough oxygen, the microorganisms that normally consume wood became far less active. Ironically, the same river chosen to conceal the crime created conditions that quietly protected important parts of the evidence for generations. As divers carefully documented the cargo hold, they encountered preserved wooden planks that still retained much of their original form. Heavy iron fasteners continued holding sections together despite spending more than a century beneath the water. Every surviving beam provided another glimpse into the confined space where 110 captive Africans had been forced to endure the Atlantic crossing. The remarkable condition of these materials gave specialists something few archaeological sites ever offer: the ability to study not only the ship's construction, but also the environment where one of history's darkest crimes unfolded. Experienced archaeologists immediately recognized that this preservation was extraordinary. Jim Delgado, one of the co-principal investigators studying the wreck, described it as the most intact slave ship known in the archaeological record anywhere in the world. That assessment carried enormous significance. Historians estimate that thousands of slave ships crossed the Atlantic over several centuries, yet almost none survived in a condition allowing researchers to examine their cargo spaces with this level of detail. Compared with other known discoveries, this vessel stood almost alone. Even so, experts remained careful not to let excitement replace evidence. Every preserved plank required detailed documentation before broader conclusions could be drawn. Scientists understood that remarkable discoveries often attract assumptions, and archaeology depends on patience rather than speculation. Still, the unusual condition of the wreck naturally invited difficult questions. Had history underestimated what rivers could preserve? Could other forgotten wrecks still hold similar evidence beneath layers of sediment, waiting to be found? Those possibilities gave the expedition a significance that extended far beyond one ship resting beneath Alabama's waters. This was no longer simply an investigation into a historic wreck. It had become a rare opportunity to examine physical evidence that had survived against overwhelming odds, suggesting the river was still protecting answers that researchers had only begun to uncover. Deep beneath the sediment, hidden answers may still remain. Could these ancient traces reveal the identities of those who vanished? What secrets might their descendants uncover? And will the next discovery finally bring forgotten voices closer to being heard as researchers continue searching for answers? Stay with us. Echoes hidden within ancient sediment. By this stage of the investigation, the ship itself was no longer the only focus. The preserved timbers had already revealed that history had survived in remarkable condition, but researchers now turned their attention towards something far more personal. Their next question was not simply how the vessel had endured beneath the Mobile River for more than 160 years. Instead, they wanted to know whether the people forced into its cramped cargo hold had unknowingly left behind traces of themselves that time had failed to erase. It was an ambitious idea, one that carried enormous scientific promise while demanding extraordinary caution. The search focused on the thick sediment covering the cargo hold. Though it looked like ordinary river mud, scientists knew the oxygen-poor conditions had preserved it for generations. If microscopic human traces had been trapped before the ship sank, some evidence might still remain hidden within the sediment. To investigate that possibility, researchers carefully collected sediment samples from the very space where the 110 captive Africans had been confined during the transatlantic voyage. Every step followed strict scientific procedures designed to prevent contamination and preserve the integrity of the evidence. The samples were then examined by forensic specialists, including Frankie West, director of the Forensic Science Program at Western Carolina University, whose work focused on determining whether any genetic material could still be identified after more than a century and a half beneath the river. Even with growing excitement surrounding the discovery, the research team refused to overstate its findings. Recovering ancient DNA from such an environment is an extremely difficult process, and success can never be assumed. Time, moisture, chemical changes, and countless natural factors often destroy genetic material long before scientists have the opportunity to study it. The researchers understood that hope alone could not replace evidence. Every conclusion would require careful testing, repeated analysis, and independent verification before becoming part of the historical record. Still, there were encouraging signs. Public statements from those involved suggested that preservation conditions inside the cargo hold had exceeded expectations, allowing the investigation to continue with cautious optimism. Rather than describing the work as disappointing or inconclusive, Researchers emphasized words such as careful, significant, and unprecedented. Those descriptions stopped well short of declaring a breakthrough, but they hinted that the sediment might contain information capable of deepening historical understanding in ways previously considered impossible. If future analysis confirms that recoverable genetic evidence survived inside the hold, the discovery could represent far more than an archaeological achievement. It could strengthen connections between descendants and ancestral communities whose identities were deliberately stripped away during the slave trade. For now, however, the answers remain hidden inside microscopic fragments, leaving researchers and descendants waiting for science to determine whether the river has preserved one final witness to a story that history almost erased forever. Generations carried a memory no one could prove, but what hidden stories survived? In the whispers of Africa Town, why did descendants hold on to a truth the world dismissed? And what would emerge when the forgotten vessel finally revealed its secrets beneath the silent river waters? Stay glued. Memories stronger than silence endured. Long before divers located the wreck beneath the Mobile River, another record of the voyage had already survived. It did not rest inside preserved timber or buried beneath layers of sediment. Instead, it lived in the memories passed from one generation to the next. While many historians searched for physical proof, the descendants of those carried aboard the Clotilda never stopped telling the story. Their families preserved names, experiences, and traditions for decades, refusing to believe that the ship and its passengers had simply disappeared from history. What some dismissed as local legend remained, for those descendants, a deeply personal truth waiting to be confirmed. Their confidence came from stories repeated across generations. Parents shared them with children, who later passed them to their own families. The details varied with time, but the central message remained remarkably consistent. Their ancestors had survived an illegal slave voyage, arrived in Alabama against the law, and watched the vessel deliberately destroyed to conceal the crime. Although official records left many questions unanswered, these oral histories kept the memory alive long after the people who experienced the voyage were gone. For the descendants, the search for the wreck was never about proving a rumor. It was about finding evidence that supported what their families had always known. After slavery ended, many of the Clotilda survivors chose not to scatter across the country. Instead, 32 of them pooled their resources and purchased land near Mobile, Alabama. There, they established a community that became known as Africa Town. It represented far more than a settlement. It became a place where they could rebuild lives interrupted by violence while preserving pieces of the cultures that had been taken from them. They maintained elements of their languages, traditions, and customs, creating a lasting connection to the homes they had been forced to leave behind. That determination allowed future generations to inherit more than stories. They inherited a living identity. One of the most important voices belonged to Cudjo Lewis, also known by his African name, Kosala. As the last known survivor of the Clotilda, he spent years recounting his capture, the Atlantic crossing, and the life he rebuilt in Alabama. During the 1920s, author Zora Neale Hurston recorded his memories, preserving first-hand testimony that later appeared in her book, Barracoon. Although completed in 1931, the manuscript remained unpublished for decades before finally reaching readers in 2018, giving the public direct access to a survivor's account many believed had nearly been lost. The discovery of the ship transformed those family memories into something visible, but it did not create the history itself. The history had always existed in Africa Town, carried through conversations, traditions, and determination rather than official documents. For some observers, the wreck finally validated generations of testimony. For others, it demonstrated that oral history can preserve truths even when physical evidence remains hidden. Together, the descendants' memories and the archaeological discoveries formed two halves of the same story, suggesting that the greatest legacy of the Clotilda was never the ship resting beneath the river, but the people who refused to let its history disappear. Ancient memories are now colliding with cutting-edge science, raising questions about what hidden truths may emerge from the evidence beneath the surface. Could genetic clues finally reveal forgotten origins? Will archaeological discoveries connect lost voices to real communities? What shocking revelation awaits as research continues? Stay tuned. Clues point toward forgotten homelands. The investigation had reached a stage where archaeology alone could not answer the biggest remaining questions. The preserved Clotilda had revealed where the captives suffered, while the surrounding sediment offered the possibility of finding biological traces left behind by those who endured the voyage. However, researchers understood that discovering evidence would only be the beginning. The greater challenge was determining whether modern science could help reconnect the 110 captive Africans with the communities and cultures they came from before their lives were violently changed forever. Scientists knew slavery had intentionally erased identities. Records from the illegal voyage were incomplete, names were rarely preserved, and official documents often reduced people to cargo rather than individuals. Because of this, descendants relied on oral histories, family traditions, and limited historical records to preserve knowledge about their ancestors. Researchers hoped science could strengthen those memories without replacing the importance of the stories passed down through generations. The investigation brought together experts from multiple fields. Archaeologists studied the ship and cargo hold, forensic specialists examined possible biological material from the sediment, historians compared findings with surviving records, and linguists analyzed cultural traditions preserved among descendants. Together, these disciplines created a more complete picture of the people behind the historical event. Previous research by geneticist Fatima Jackson and other scholars suggested that many individuals aboard the Clotilda may not have come directly from the kingdom of Dahomey. Instead, evidence indicated they may have belonged to neighboring communities affected by regional conflicts before being captured and sold into the Atlantic slave trade. This possibility opened the door to understanding more specific ancestral and cultural origins. Despite these discoveries, researchers remained cautious. Connecting ancient genetic material with modern populations is extremely complex due to centuries of migration, changes within communities, and the challenges of preserving DNA over time. Scientists emphasized that no exact villages or family connections could be confirmed without extensive testing and verification. Still, the combination of archaeology, genetics, oral history, and linguistics offered new possibilities. Each field added another piece to a story that had survived despite attempts to erase it. For descendants, uncovering even part of their ancestors' origins could restore connections that slavery had deliberately broken. Although many questions remain unanswered, every discovery moves researchers closer to understanding not only where the journey ended, but where it truly began. Experts now face a haunting choice. Can a forgotten wreck truly be protected without disturbing its final resting place? Should history remain hidden beneath the waters or brought back for the world to witness? The next decision could change everything, but what will they choose? Deciding the fate of forgotten wreckage. The discovery of the Clotilda created a question after researchers finally located the sunken slave ship. Finding the wreck answered one mystery, but it raised another. Should the vessel be brought to the surface or protected where it had rested for more than 160 years? Experts, historians, engineers, and descendants faced the challenge of deciding whether recovery would honor the ship's story or risk damaging the evidence that survived beneath the Mobile River. At first, raising the Clotilda appeared to be an opportunity to share its history with the world. A recovered vessel could allow museums, researchers, and visitors to examine the remains of the last known slave ship to illegally transport Africans into the United States. It could become an educational resource for generations and provide a connection to a chapter of history. However, the condition of the wreck made the decision more complicated. Although the river helped preserve much of the lower hull, the ship had suffered damage over time. Investigations showed that the vessel had been broken apart after being struck by a large ship, and the surviving wood remained extremely fragile. Any attempt to raise the entire structure could destroy sections that had endured for generations. After study, the Alabama Historical Commission Task Force concluded in 2024 that the Clotilda could not be raised intact. Experts determined that removing the vessel would likely require separating or damaging parts of the wreck, creating the possibility that efforts to preserve history could actually harm it. Instead, specialists recommended protecting the ship where it remained. Plans focused on reducing risks from environmental conditions and passing vessels. The decision reflected an understanding among archaeologists that preservation does not always require removal. Sometimes, keeping historical evidence in its original location offers protection. The choice created different reactions. Some believed the ship should be displayed in a museum where people could experience its significance. Others, especially descendants of the survivors, felt the Clotilda was only one part of a larger story involving memory, identity, and recognition for their ancestors. The future of the wreck became a reminder that history is not always preserved through public displays. Sometimes, the respectful approach is protecting what remains hidden. Beneath the Mobile River, the Clotilda continues standing as evidence of a journey meant to disappear, while its meaning continues unfolding through research, remembrance, and efforts to understand the legacy it left behind. Beyond the wreckage, Africa Town's fight for recognition enters a new chapter. What secrets still echo through this historic community? Who is responsible for the forgotten struggles that remain hidden? And what revelations could emerge as the past finally demands answers from the shadows of history? A community beyond the wreck. After the discovery of the Clotilda, attention shifted from the river to Africa Town, the community created by survivors who refused to let their history disappear. The preserved wreck confirmed a story carried through generations, but it also revealed that the effects of the illegal voyage continued to shape the community. For descendants, the ship represented more than an artifact. It represented survival, identity, and a painful legacy connected to their lives. Africa Town had long preserved the memory of those who arrived aboard the vessel in 1860. After slavery ended, many survivors built a place where they could rebuild their lives, maintain traditions, and protect connections to their African heritage. Over time, the community became a symbol of resilience, yet new challenges threatened its historic character. The discovery brought international attention, but it also exposed struggles that existed long before the wreck was found. One major concern was preserving Africa Town's landmarks, traditions, and family stories. Residents and descendants believed the significance of the Clotilda extended beyond the remains beneath the Mobile River. Its true legacy lived through the people who carried memories forward, despite years of limited recognition. Protecting the community became as important as protecting the ship itself. Environmental issues also became part of Africa Town's concerns. Industrial activity and pollution created fears about the future of a community. Many residents believed honoring the past required more than studying an old vessel. It required protecting the place where descendants continued living with history's consequences. The discovery also encouraged discussions about museums, education, and public awareness. Historians and community leaders saw the Clotilda as an opportunity to teach future generations about the transatlantic slave trade, the lives of captive Africans, and the strength of their descendants. However, some argued that recognition alone was not enough. They believed preservation required continued support and respect. As research continued, the larger meaning of the Clotilda became clearer. The ship was never only about a wreck beneath the water. It represented the people whose lives were transformed by that voyage and the descendants who continued seeking acknowledgement of their history. The discovery answered where the vessel had been hidden, but it also raised deeper questions about memory, responsibility, and justice. Africa Town remained at the heart of those questions. Its story showed that uncovering the past was only the beginning. The ship had resurfaced, but its significance continued through the voices, struggles, and hopes connected to it. Decades beneath the waves, This forgotten witness still holds secrets waiting to emerge, but can future discoveries reveal the full truth behind its final voyage? Why do mysteries remain hidden? And what could researchers uncover next from the depths of history still left unknown today? History's echoes beneath the surface. The discovery of the Clotilda transformed the way people viewed shipwrecks. What began as an underwater investigation into a forgotten vessel became proof that some chapters of history survive even after deliberate attempts to erase them. More than 160 years after the ship sank beneath the Mobile River, its remains emerged as a witness to a journey that was meant to disappear. When divers reached the wreck, they discovered far more than broken wood. They found evidence connected to the last known slave ship to illegally bring Africans into the United States. The preserved sections revealed details about Captain William Foster's attempt to destroy the vessel, the illegal voyage, and the 110 captive Africans who endured the crossing. Each discovery strengthened a story that descendants had carried through generations. However, the importance of the Clotilda extended beyond the remains. Researchers knew many questions remained unanswered. The preserved timbers showed how the vessel survived underwater, but they could not reveal every detail about the individuals who suffered aboard it. Scientists continued studying archaeological evidence, historical records, and biological traces while avoiding claims that could not yet be proven. The uncertainty surrounding the wreck became part of its significance. Instead of providing a conclusion, the discovery created opportunities for research. Future investigations may reveal more about the origins, experiences, and identities of those forced onto the ship. Yet experts understand that recovering history requires time, patience, and careful examination. The discovery also changed perspectives on preservation. Leaving the Clotilda beneath the river demonstrated that protecting history does not always require removing it from its original location. Sometimes, evidence is best preserved where it has remained for generations, allowing researchers to study it while protecting its condition. For Africatown and the descendants of the survivors, the wreck became a symbol of memory, resilience, recognition. It confirmed that family stories were connected to a historical event and showed that the impact of the voyage continued long after the ship disappeared. Clotilda's discovery did not end the story. It reopened a chapter that still demands research, reflection, and understanding. Beneath the water, the wreck remains a connection between past and present, holding mysteries that future discoveries may continue to reveal. The divers found a ship, but they uncovered something greater, a reminder that history does not vanish when buried. It waits for those willing to search, question, and remember. So, what do you think? Was Clotilda's discovery the most important reminder that buried history deserves to be uncovered? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.